Yes, yes, yes. Hey, everybody, it's the Happiness Hour on the Dennis Prager Show. Forget everything. Forget gasoline prices. Forget terror. Forget woes about illegal immigration. This is the hour that is apolitical. It is about happiness. You ready? The more you are able to say, I was wrong, the happier you will be. I am dead serious about that. The more you are capable of saying, now, I don't mean to the point where you berate yourself unnecessarily, but when you are wrong, if you take responsibility for being wrong, you will be happier. It's tough to do, but it's tough to be happy. That's why I titled my book on happiness, Happiness is a Serious Problem. It is. This is one example. You cannot be happy if you do not take responsibility for your errors. That's it. And that is why we are raising unhappy children, because we no longer want to use red markers on their pages. You know that teachers have dropped red markers very often because it might demoralize the child. It might affect their self-esteem. Do you know how your self-esteem is raised? It is raised by your ability to say, I was wrong. I failed. In little things and big things. Oh, it's huge. It is huge. Oh, yeah, I made a mistake. Not when you're caught but you know when it happens. You know, the other day, I was in a parking lot, and I saw a minivan, and it was parked. These are among my favorite people in America. The people who park diagonally. Leave their car there, take up 2 precious spaces at the grocery, and I was thinking the other day of I so dislike people who say screw you to the world that I actually wanted to stand there and wait for the owner to come back. But I want to ask you a question. Let us say I had stood there, waited for the owner and said, you know, sir, ma'am, you parked taking up two spaces. That's really wrong. What do you think the odds are that the person would say, oh, my God, you are right, and I really feel bad about it? But what do you think the odds are? Or do you think the odds are, screw you, fella? Which do you think would be the more likely response? And that's what I mean by, you know who the happier person is? The happier person would be the one who would be able to say, you are right, it was a really selfish thing I did. That ability to say that makes you a happier person. The ability to say, yeah, by golly, I really did screw up. Not it was a mistake, you know, I should have, because it was a mistake, is it not taking full responsibility? I'll tell you another reason that it will make you a happier person. Number one, it means that you have high self-esteem. The ability to say, I screwed up, means that you have such a good vision of yourself, such a good assessment of yourself, that you are strong enough to say when you are, and only strong people can say, you are right, I really screwed up. Okay? It means that you believe that you are the master of your life. You control your behavior. It wasn't done to you, you did it. I am responsible for what happened. People will respect you more and ultimately like you more because your friends and others in your life will learn over time that they're not really capable of saying to you the truth. And what will happen over time is people in your life will not relate to you on a real level. They will not authentically relate. If they can, including your children. If your child can't say to you, Dad, Mom, you were wrong, then they will stop over time talking real to you. They'll talk about the weather. They'll talk about family things maybe, but they're not going to talk real to you. The inability to say to a person, if you know that you're not going to ever hear, gee, did I really? Now, by the way, it doesn't mean that they're right. And anybody in your life who's constantly telling you you're wrong, you don't want in your life. There's a balance here. Please understand, you don't need resident critics in your spouse or in your friends. Alan and I have been close for many years, and he hesitated because he was wondering, what if I have to criticize the way Dennis did something on a show or handled something else? He's my friend, and I don't want to lose my friend. That was a big concern to you. And I try to assure you that I can take that, and it turned out that I can. It was the best little surprise, I guess, for you, because he was right to worry about it. I mean, you've heard him say on the air, do not sing, you don't sing well. He means it. This is not for your edification. But that means that Alan can be more real with me. That's the point that I'm saying to you. And I can say to him the same thing. Now, again, I keep emphasizing the need for balance here because you don't want friends or spouses to constantly criticize you. You can do without that. It's really big. The ability to not get defensive when a critical word is addressed to you, especially by an outsider. See, when it's done by a spouse, it's a totally different dynamic. So leave the spousal issue aside for now. But in general, I have to give you another personal example. I get hate mail. There's no public figure who takes stands who doesn't get hate mail. There's nothing special about that. Do you know that I actually read the hate mail and think the whole time, do I have anything to learn even from this blubbering, frothing at the mouth, almost sometimes frightening? I don't mean because of threats. I don't get threats. But do I have anything to learn from this person's anger at me even? And the reason that I could do that is I'm very secure. And so what I'm saying is it's only the happy person, the secure person, that can hear the criticisms, that can hear you were wrong. That doesn't mean I always agree. You hear on the phone that I defend myself if I think I was right. I try to hear the other. The point isn't that I'm noble. The point is that I'm happy. Even better, I'm secure, and insecurity means unhappy. All right, let me take your calls here. Kathy in Minneapolis, Dennis Prager, hi.
Hi. For me, I've been married over 30 years, and I think the most important thing in marriage is the three most important words are not "I love you." They were "you were right."
Yes, even better. You know what? That's very intelligent. Thank you. I always used to say the three best words are "I am sorry." But you know what? "You were right" is better. It's very good. See, that's a good example of learning from a call, which I've learned. I mean, I've learned more from you folks 100 times over than I did at Columbia University. That is a very good one. You were right. All right, let's go to some more calls here. And in Atlanta, it's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Dennis Prager.
How you doing, Dennis?
Okay, thank you.
You gave the example of the gentleman who took up 2 parking spots.
I don't know if it was a gentleman. It could have been a gentle lady.
That's true. It could have been.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny how I assumed it was a man?
Yes, funny, and this is going to absolutely ruin. I assumed it was a woman. It's very funny, partially because it was a grocery store and there were more women there than men, but go on.
Okay. I think maybe the causality is reversed. It wouldn't be very good to expect that a person who would have the audacity to take up 2 spaces like that would be the type of person who would come out and say,
You were right.
Oh, you were right. I was wrong. You must be a happy person to begin with to feel comfortable enough.
That's right.
To say,
yes,
you were wrong.
But they feed on each other. You see, this is a great call. This is a sort of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Your ability to say you're wrong, does that produce your security? Or your security, does that produce the ability to say? And the answer is both. I believe the way you act is the way you will be. Rather than you act on the basis of what you are, I believe that you are what you act. Act first, feel second. Act kind, you'll be kind. I remember once a furious driver. A driver was screaming at me because I had swerved into his lane. I did. I was preoccupied. I don't know what it was. And he yelled and screamed, and I said, you know what? You're right. It was amazing. It was a phenomenon to watch. It was almost like the guy was unhappy. I took the wind out of his sails. I said, "You're right. I am sorry." Believe me, my instinct was to be defensive. All right, what are you yelling? What are you, nuts? All right. Screw you. I mean, instead I said, you are right. I am sorry. And the guy just shut up. He said, okay. And the secure person is first and foremost able to say, you were right. And Scott in Flower Mound, Texas. Dennis Prager, hi.
I worked for a guy for 6 years whose defining characteristic was, as it related to his duties at work, simply and utterly could never admit that he had made a mistake. Because of that, I view those 6 years negatively, and it's a shame because that's the only criteria that leads to that negative evaluation. If it wasn't for that, it would have been a relatively happy 6 years.
Yeah,
but because of
right.
that,
And also, because it was an unhappy, of course. And the other thing is, when you know that no matter what, the person will not be able to say you're right, then it ends dialogue. That's what I want to warn you all about with friends and so on, and with coworkers. If you can't say, on occasion at least, God, you're right, you don't know what it does to most people. I mean, there are jerks who will just thrive on it, but for most people, it is empowering. Back in a moment. I had a very interesting experience with a letter writer who keeps a blog. Read my column, my syndicated column this week, and wrote me a letter, just a vicious attack on me for something I didn't say. And I sent him back a response saying, you owe me an apology. You will find this interesting, my friends. Listen to this. This is what I did. This guy writes me a letter, and he keeps a blog. So I knew, aside from everything else, that on the internet, it was very possible that somebody would quote me, without quotation marks, just cite me, as saying the opposite of what I believe on a certain issue. And, once it's in the internet, it's people assume it's truth. I read on this blog that Dennis Prager said X or Y, and I said the opposite. And I wrote him back a very direct letter saying what he did was utterly wrong. He had utterly misstated what I said, and I sent back the actual quote from my piece. And I ended the column and I said, you owe me an apology. If you apologize, please know in advance that I will accept it and consider the matter closed. This is after really berating him for the irresponsible thing he wrote. He writes back, Dear Dennis, you were right. I was wrong. I did entirely misstate your position in the letter. I'm glad you caught it before I put it in my blog, and I apologize. And I wrote back, accepted, case closed. Now, are there any losers in this? Any net losers? I can't overstate what it says about you if you're able to say to somebody, you're right. Only a jerk thinks less of you, and you don't care what jerks think about you. Okay, let's go to Hal in Sherman Oaks, California. Hal, Dennis Prager.
Oh, hi, Dennis. Saying I'm sorry is one of my most effective parenting techniques. I'm a single father of a 7-year-old, and occasionally I overreact or I come up with an inappropriate consequence or misunderstand. And I find when I admit it and I say I'm sorry, I get a lot more cooperation. It just makes my life a lot easier just on a practical level.
Yes, thank you. I have said for years that the most powerful words you can say to your child, and I don't only mean a 7-year-old, I mean a 47-year-old. If you have never said to your child, I'm sorry, something is awry. And I mean it. It's more powerful than I love you. I am sorry. And it's as true if your child is 47 as if your child is 7. It does not undermine your parental authority. I mean, if it comes from a weak place, it does. If, I hurt your feelings because I punished you, well, maybe you deserve that punishment, but it is very powerful. It's powerful for everybody. But I think that woman who first called said it better. You were right is even better than I am sorry, because I am sorry does not imply necessarily that the other person was right. It just means you're sorry it happened. It could be different. 1-8-Prager-776, Dennis Prager. You're listening to the Happiness Hour. We talk about happiness, and the subject this week is how making you secure it is to be able to say, you're right, you were right. It's such a big deal. All right, let's take your calls, old pals and friends and others in Minneapolis. Susan. Hello, Susan. Dennis Prager.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Well, this has just been a great topic, and what I wanted to tell you is I've learned quite a bit about my weaknesses in my 30s, and that wouldn't seem like it would be empowering or happy, but it has. It's made me very happy to know what my weaknesses are,
yes,
because that helps me with my interactions with people, and it's made me much less defensive.
Oh,
and so when
exactly.
there's conflicts,
yes,
I can do much better and not be so defensive with people.
That's it, not to be defensive. Bless you. Very eloquent. That's exactly right. All righty, back to Atlanta and Ben. Hello, Ben. Dennis Prager.
How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Another thing that admitting when you make mistakes, I mean, it's like at work. If you make a mistake, if you just go right up front and, hey, I made a mistake and this is it, how can we fix it? The thing is, when you have other people who like to try to use you as the scapegoat and put blame on you, if they know that you admit to your mistakes, it's a lot harder for someone to use you later on. For example, if they made a mistake and goes, oh, it's his fault, he did this. But if the company knows, if your friends know, if the people around you know that, when you make a mistake, you admit it.
Oh, yeah.
If someone else tries to put their mistake, their blame on you,
that's
it's
right.
a lot harder
very
to
good.
to you when people know, hey, you know what? He makes a mistake. He comes right
That's
up.
right. You have credibility. That's a very, very good point. You earn credibility with people, because then when you do defend yourself, maybe you know, not every time someone says you're wrong do you say you're right. You're nuts. The question is whether you're objectively wrong, not whether you feel wrong. Were you objectively wrong? If you diagonally parked, you were wrong. End of issue. You crossed the other line into the other person's parking spot. Own up to it. But you get credibility with people. That's exactly right. Do you know, believe it or not, I know that if I could say on the radio, you know, you're right. I take back what I just said. I know that it only helps my show. How empowering it is to be able to say to another, you're right. It's better than I'm sorry, and I'm sorry is good. Because, you know, a lot of times people and public figures will say, I'm sorry, but they're not real. For example, I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings. That means I'm right, but I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. The I am sorry is not at all the same thing as you were right. And I was wrong. And that's what I'm talking about, not I am sorry, which has its own place in life. But if you were right, what are you sorry for? Let me summarize some calls because we have under a minute to go on this edition of the Happiness Hour. And Tom says, I always ask my wife, would you forgive me? Yeah, that's not the same thing, though. That's not the same. I'm very specific here. Someone has said something about what you did wrong, and then you say, you're right. I was wrong. And the more specific, the better. It's not the same as would you forgive me. I hope you take this to heart. It will change your life.